There is a reason why only a small remnant rises to the top, why only a precious few seem to fulfill the calling on their lives, and I must tell you, it's not because they are better, smarter, or richer than the rest. No, no, no. It's because they dared to obey. The difference between the successful and the stagnant is not talent. It's not education. It's not connections. It is the willingness to surrender. The 2% say yes, even when everything inside them screams no. You see, the 98%, they hesitate, they wait. They look for a sign in the sky when God already gave them a word in their spirit. They trade obedience for opinion, and purpose for popularity. Oh, how many dreams have died because someone feared rejection more than they feared disobedience. The 2% understand this. The wilderness is holy ground. They walk through loneliness. They are misunderstood. They are mocked. But they keep walking because the vision is real. They don't wait to be seen. They serve unseen. They sweep the floor like it's a throne room because for them everything is worship. I tell you this, the anointing never falls on the comfortable. It falls on the broken. It rests on the ones who gave up everything they thought they wanted to become everything God destined them to be. The 98% say one day, the 2% say today, the 98% look for motivation, the 2% live by discipline, the 98% talk, the 2% walk, and I'm here to tell you tonight, you can cross over, you can be part of the 2%. But the door is narrow, the way is steep, and yes, it will cost you something, but oh, what you gain! What you gain will be greater than anything you lose. So I ask you now, will you be among the many? Or the few? Will you be remembered for your excuses or your obedience? Will you die full of dreams or empty, having poured it all out? Because the 2%, they're not chosen at birth. They're forged in the fire. They're built in the quiet. They're crowned in secret before they're ever seen in public. And their success, it wasn't luck. It was surrender. Most people spend their lives searching for purpose, but never truly finding it. Not because it isn't there, but because fear has built a wall too high to climb. There's a divine call whispered into every soul, a reason we're born, a blueprint heaven wrote before we ever took our first breath. But that call doesn't shout. It whispers, and fear screams. Divine purpose doesn't always come wrapped in clarity. It's inconvenient. It asks you to leave comfort, to step out onto water with nothing beneath you but trust. But human fear clings to the shore. It demands certainty before obedience. It wants the map before taking a step. Purpose doesn't wait for qualifications. It waits for surrender. Yet fear brings a long list of disqualifications. Too young, too old, too broken, too late. And many believe it, not because they are uncalled, but because they believe fear more than they believe God. The ones who rise, those few, they feel fear too, but they don't bow to it. They move in spite of trembling. They step into rooms they don't feel worthy to enter, because they know they were sent. They say yes while still shaking. Fear says, "What if you fail?" Purpose replies, "But what if you obey?" There are thousands, millions, called for something greater, but they stay behind walls of delay and doubt, praying for courage when they already have the command. Fear always has perfect timing. Not now, not yet, maybe later. But purpose calls you now, and until someone values the voice of heaven more than the echo of fear, they will never walk fully in the life they were meant to live. The difference isn't destiny, it's decision. Obedience never promised to be easy. It promised to be necessary. Comfort is the wide road, smooth and predictable, lined with familiar voices that applaud your caution. But obedience, it is the narrow path. It asks for your yes before it explains the why. Many people live their whole lives asking for a sign, when what God is waiting for is a surrender. Obedience doesn't wait to understand. It moves when it's told. It packs the bags even when there's no destination on the ticket. It lets go even when the hands are shaking. Comfort says, stay where it's safe. But obedience says, go where you're called. Comfort builds a life that's easy to manage. It keeps the same circle, the same habits, the same small dreams. It's familiar, but it's also a prison. Obedience, on the other hand, will pull you into places you never imagined, into risk, into sacrifice, into stretching. It will strip away what's unnecessary so that what's eternal can be revealed. The few who succeed are not the most talented. They are the ones who chose to follow the voice of purpose when it cost them something. They said yes when it meant walking alone. They chose the mission over their mood, the calling over their convenience, and often obedience feels like loss at first. You give up what's comfortable, what's logical, what's popular. You might be misunderstood. You might walk into silence. But obedience always births something that comfort never can: transformation. Because the greatest breakthroughs don't come from the most strategic decisions. They come from the most surrendered ones. And the ones who truly live, they're not the ones who felt the least fear, but the ones who chose obedience anyway. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, it comes from resistance, from striving, from wrestling with what you already know you're supposed to release. Struggle is not always external. Often it's the inward tug-of war between what we want and what we know is right. It's trying to carry a life we were never meant to manage on our own. Surrender is not weakness. It is the strength to stop pretending you're in control. It is the wisdom to say, not my will. Struggle says, I'll figure it out. Surrender says, I trust you. One is fueled by fear of letting go. The other is rooted in peace, even when the path isn't clear. The reason so many remain stuck isn't because they lack effort. It's because their effort is going in the wrong direction. They're trying to force doors open that were never theirs to walk through, trying to manipulate outcomes instead of yielding to divine timing. Struggle creates tension. Surrender makes room for grace. There are people who have spent years in motion, running in circles, confusing busyness for progress, when what was needed wasn't more hustle, but a holy release. The break through you seek might not be on the other side of trying harder. It might be on the other side of letting go, and surrender doesn't mean you do nothing. It means everything you do flows from trust, not panic. It means you say yes without needing every answer. It means you stop fighting battles that were never yours to win in the first place. The struggle often looks like control. The surrender often feels like loss, but only one leads to peace, and the ones who step into the fullness of their calling, they are not the ones who fought the hardest, but the ones who finally laid it down. Faith was never meant to live in theory. It's not a concept to admire, it's a force to move you. Real faith doesn't stay seated. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions or guaranteed outcomes. It moves while the storm still rages. It steps out while the ground still looks uncertain. Many speak of belief, but live as if they don't trust the very thing they proclaim. They talk of miracles, but never make room for one. They pray for change, but refuse to take the first step. Faith that does not act is not faith. It's sentiment. It may sound good, feel deep, even stir emotion, but without movement it dies in place. The difference between those who succeed and those who stall is not belief. It's obedience in motion. The ones who rise don't wait for the fear to leave. They act while the fear is present. They understand that faith isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to keep walking in spite of it. Faith built the ark before the flood came. Faith walked around the walls before they fell. Faith reached for the hem of his garment without a guarantee. There is always a risk in action, but there's far greater risk in standing still. When you act on faith, heaven responds. Not always in the way you expect, not always in your timing, but always with purpose, because faith isn't about controlling the outcome, it's about trusting the one who holds it. Many ask for a sign, but forget the sign often comes after the step. Faith unlocks doors that comfort never will. It births movements, opens realms, shifts legacies, not because it's loud, but because it's willing. Willing to move, to speak, to build, even when no one sees. And the truth is, those who carry out their calling didn't wait to feel ready. They acted on what they heard. They moved on what they knew, because faith, real faith, always leaves footprints. Time is not just a resource. It is a responsibility. Every minute is a gift, handed down from eternity into your hands, and what you do with it reveals what you truly value. Time is not neutral. It's either invested or wasted, managed with purpose or spent in distraction. The difference between those who rise and those who remain is not how much time they have. It's how they steward what they've been given. The successful don't have more hours in a day. They just treat their time like it belongs to something greater than themselves. They don't casually drift from moment to moment. They live with intention. They understand that every second spent scrolling aimlessly, hesitating out of fear, or putting off what they know they're meant to do is a second they can never get back. Time reveals your priorities more clearly than your words. You can say you're committed, but if your time says otherwise, then the truth is already known, and time doesn't wait for anyone. It won't slow down for your indecision or speed up for your impatience. It moves steadily, whether you move with it or not. Those who succeed have learned that managing time is more than productivity. It's spiritual, it's stewardship. It's taking the hours you've been given and saying, I won't waste this. It's showing up when you don't feel like it. It's finishing what you start. It's making space for rest, yes, but also for obedience. Some are waiting for a big moment, a divine opportunity, not realizing that the door they're praying for is built with the bricks of their daily routine. What you do with your mornings, your evenings, your quiet in-between moments, that's what forms your future. That's where transformation is forged. And make no mistake, greatness is rarely the result of one grand decision. It's the compound effect of thousands of small, faithful choices, made daily, quietly, and with care, because time is not just passing, it's speaking, it's testifying, it's keeping record of what you honored and what you ignored. Greatness is not born in spotlight moments. It is formed in the hidden ones. The world sees the outcome, the platform, the applause, but it doesn't see the years of quiet faithfulness, the unnoticed repetition, the small acts done when no one was watching. Consistency in the small is where real transformation begins. It's easy to be passionate for a day. It's inspiring to make a big declaration, to dream big dreams. But the people who actually walk into the fullness of their calling are those who show up again and again. When the feelings fade, when the excitement wears off, when the progress feels invisible, they clean the room, write the page, make the call, serve the vision, not because someone is watching, but because they understand that small is not insignificant. The small things test your motive. They ask the question, will you still be faithful when there is no reward in sight? Will you still give your best when the door hasn't opened yet? Most people want the miracle but resist the mundane. They want promotion without preparation, but the small things, those daily, repetitive, almost invisible choices, Those are the foundation stones of every break through that last. The ones who rise are the ones who keep sowing even when the field looks barren. They keep showing up to the early mornings, the late nights, the unglamorous work that builds unseen character, and they understand this. God watches what man overlooks. Heaven sees what is done in secret and calls it sacred, because consistency in the small is not just discipline, it's trust. It's saying, I believe this matters, even if I can't see the result yet. And over time, what seemed like nothing becomes something. The small seed becomes a harvest. The quiet obedience becomes a testimony, and the one who was faithful with little is entrusted with more. Not suddenly, but slowly, not by force, but by faithfulness. So while others are waiting for a big break, the few who succeed are building something far more powerful, a foundation that cannot be shaken. Emotion can start a journey, but it cannot sustain it. It's the spark, not the engine. You can cry in a moment of inspiration, feel stirred during a powerful message, even make bold promises in the height of passion. But none of that is commitment. Emotion fades. It rises and falls with circumstances. But commitment remains when feelings no longer cooperate. There are countless people who felt a calling, who had a moment of clarity, a surge of passion, a deep conviction. But they didn't follow through. Not because the calling changed, but because the emotion that carried them into it eventually wore off. And when the emotion disappeared, so did their obedience. The path to purpose is not paved with inspiration. It's paved with decisions. Daily ones, quiet ones, hard ones. Commitment isn't loud. It doesn't always feel good. It looks like doing the right thing on the wrong day. It looks like pressing forward when there's no applause, no sign, and no rush of excitement to keep you going. Emotion can get you to say yes. Commitment gets you to keep showing up after you've said it. And the truth is, the cost of anything great will eventually confront your feelings. There will be days when everything inside you wants to quit, when the road is dry and the reward seems distant. That is the moment that separates the few from the many. That is where the shift happens, from feelings to faithfulness. The ones who rise are not the most emotional. They are not the most stirred. They are the most consistent. They understand that passion without perseverance is a flame without fuel. It burns bright for a moment and then goes out. So while the world chases the next high, the next wave of inspiration, the few who succeed build on something deeper. They build on commitment. They don't ask, do I feel it today? They ask, was I called to this? And if the answer is yes, they keep going, even through tears, even in silence, even when the feeling is gone. Because real commitment is not a feeling. It's a decision you make every day, long after the feeling has left. Isolation is one of the most misunderstood seasons in a person's life. It feels like rejection, like delay, like something is wrong. But more often than not, it is divine preparation. It's not punishment, it's pruning. It's not silence, it's strategy. When God is about to do something through you, he often first does something in you. And that work rarely happens in crowds. In isolation, the noise fades, the distractions quiet down. There are no audiences to impress, no applause to measure your worth. It's just you face to face with who you really are. And that is where strength is forged. That is where motives are purified. That is where identity is solidified, not by what you do, but by who you are when no one else is watching. So many people fight the season of hiddenness. They see it as wasted time, not realizing that isolation is where the roots grow deep. You don't see the growth on the surface, but beneath the soil, something is anchoring you. Without it, anything built in public would collapse in pressure. The few who rise are the ones who learn how to be still before they are seen. They allow the quiet to refine them, not define them. In that space of separation, God removes what cannot go with you into the next season. Pride dies, comparison breaks, dependency on others' approval is stripped away. What's left is raw, but it's real, and only the real can carry the weight of destiny. Preparation is uncomfortable. It tests your patience. It tests your trust, but the very isolation you pray to escape may be the training ground for the impact you were born to make. Every hidden season is a classroom. Every silence is a sharpening, and when the moment comes, when the doors open, you don't have to pretend to be ready. You are ready because you've been prepared in secret. Those who resist isolation often repeat cycles, but those who embrace it walk out of it with clarity, conviction, and a depth that the stage could never give. It is not wasted, it is holy, and if you're in that place now, alone, misunderstood, unseen, know this: you are not forgotten, you are being forged. Excuses sound reasonable to the one who makes them. They dress themselves in logic, in circumstance, in the language of timing and fairness. But underneath it all, excuses are nothing more than a refusal to take responsibility for the call on your life. They are the vocabulary of delay, the soundtrack of potential that never became reality. Excuses don't protect you. They paralyze you. They don't buy you time. They waste it. There is always a reason not to obey, always a justification to wait, to postpone, to shrink back. But behind every excuse is fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of discomfort, and instead of confronting that fear, many mask it with explanations. Why they're too young, too old, too busy, too underqualified. They rehearse those lines until they sound like truth. But they are not truth. They are chains. Those who live by excuses rarely move. They circle the same mountain year after year, calling it caution when it's really captivity. They convince themselves that they're waiting on a sign, waiting on the right moment, waiting on confirmation. But often, the truth is that God is waiting on them. Excuses are the great thief of destiny. They whisper that someone else is responsible for your lack of progress. But the hard truth is this: no one is coming to make you move. No one can steward your calling for you. Those who succeed face the same obstacles, the same weaknesses, the same fear, but they make a different choice. They don't let their limitations become their language. They don't let the narrative of their past define the possibilities of their future. Instead of saying, "I can't," they ask, "What must I do?" Instead of saying, "It's not the right time," they ask, "How can I prepare now?" The shift happens when you stop defending your limitations and start confronting them. When you realize that every excuse you cling to is costing you something sacred, your growth, your purpose, your impact. And when you finally let go of excuses, even while feeling afraid or unready, you step into a place where progress becomes possible, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally said yes. The lost stay lost not because they weren't called, but because they never took the first step. Excuses kept them bound to where they started, but the found, the few who rise, they learned to silence every reason not to move and listen instead to the quiet voice that simply says, "Go." The anointing never falls where it's easy. It doesn't settle on those who seek convenience, who stay within the lines of safety and predictability. The anointing comes upon the ones who dare to leave what's familiar, who step out where comfort has no control. It's not attracted to complacency. It's drawn to surrender, to sacrifice, to risk. Those who are truly used by God have walked through something. They've been crushed in private before they were ever trusted in public. They've wept in silence, warred in prayer, and stood in the tension between calling and cost. The anointing comes with weight. It costs more than most are willing to pay, because it requires more than just talent or passion. It demands the death of self. Comfort says, stay where it's safe. But the anointing often pushes you into places where you feel overwhelmed, underqualified, outnumbered. It doesn't make things easier. It makes them possible. It empowers you to do what you could never do in your own strength. But that empowerment doesn't show up while you're sitting still. It shows up when you say yes, even when everything in you wants to say no. You cannot be both cold and casual. The anointing doesn't rest on passive hearts. It doesn't come just because you want to be used. It comes because you're willing to be broken, poured out, made uncomfortable, misunderstood. It comes when your desire to obey outweighs your need to be safe. And there's a reason only a few walk in it deeply. It's not because they're special. It's because they said yes when it hurt. They walked through the fire and let it refine them. They stood in rooms they didn't feel worthy to enter. They prayed when no one saw, fasted when no one knew, served when no one thanked them. And in that secret place of obedience the anointing fell. Because it doesn't fall on ease, it falls on availability. It falls on those who make space for it, who clear the clutter of pride, fear, and comfort. It falls on those who go when it's hard, speak when it's costly, and remain when it's lonely. The anointing finds the willing, not the well-positioned. And once it rests, it changes everything, not just around you, but within you. So now the question isn't whether you were called. You were. The question isn't whether you have what it takes, because it was never about your strength to begin with. The question is, will you rise when it costs you everything comfortable? Will you obey when there's no applause? Will you move when the path is unclear, when fear is loud, when isolation presses in? The ones who make it, the 2%, are not made of different material. They simply made different choices. They chose surrender over struggle, obedience over comfort, faith in motion over fear in hiding. They showed up when it was hard, stayed consistent when no one clapped, and let the fire of preparation do its work. This is your hour to decide. Will you keep rehearsing excuses, or will you step into the unseen, where your yes becomes a doorway for God's power to flow? You don't need a stage to begin. You need a decision. You don't need clarity. You need courage, because the anointing doesn't fall on the gifted. It falls on the yielded. The next season doesn't belong to the convenient. It belongs to the committed. So rise. Not when it's easy, but now. Not when you feel ready, but now. Let heaven find you faithful. Let the world see what obedience looks like in flesh and blood, because you were never called to fit in with the 98%. You were born to rise with the 2%.